War. The word alone usually means chaos, gunfire, generals shouting orders, and history books filled with tragedy and bloodshed. But once upon a time, two nations decided to redefine the art of warfare. They fought over an empty, frozen rock. They invaded with flags and liquor bottles, and for nearly half a century, they kept the world's most polite war going, powered entirely by pettiness, pride, and alcohol.
Okay, I got it from here. This is the story of the Whisky War, the only war in history where every battle ended with someone getting drunk. And the craziest part, no one got hurt, not even a hangover was reported. Our stage is set in the middle of nowhere, literally. Between the icy edges of Greenland and the Arctic territories of Canada lies a cold, lonely speck of land called Hans Island. Half a mile wide, nothing but snow, ice, rocks, and wind sharp enough to make your soul shiver. In 1973, Canada and Denmark sat down to draw their official borders through the narrow strait, the narrow passage that separates Canada's Ellesmere Island from Greenland. And in doing so, they realized there was this tiny island right smack in the middle, perfectly between them. Both sides took one look at it and said, yeah, that's ours. The funny part, nobody cared enough to actually do anything about it for a decade because, again, it's just a glorified ice cube. But in the 1980s, that changed. And when it did, it got hilariously out of hand. It's 1984. The same year Apple dropped the Macintosh, Ghostbusters hit theaters, and the world was terrified of Big Brother. While everyone else was living in the modern age, Denmark decided it was time to revisit an old school concept, territorial conquest. So a small group of Danish soldiers sailed to Hans Island. They climbed its frozen surface, planted a bright red and white Danish flag, and because apparently that wasn't dramatic enough, they left a bottle of Danish schnapps at the base of the flag with a handwritten note. The note read, "Welcome to the Danish island." And just like that, the first shot of the Whisky War was poured. Now, if this had been any other two countries, that might have sparked a Cold War crisis. But this was Denmark and Canada, two of the politest nations on earth. So what did Canada do? They didn't call the UN, they didn't threaten sanctions, they did what any respectable country would do when another nation marks their turf with booze. A few weeks later, Canadian soldiers landed on Hans Island. They took down the Danish flag, planted their own maple leaf, and replaced the schnapps with a bottle of Canadian whiskey, likely Crown Royal. Because even at war, Canadians have class. They also left a note of their own, just as friendly and just as petty. Welcome to Canada. And from that moment on, an international prank war was born. Every few months, a new team of soldiers would stop by the island, swap the flag, exchange the liquor, and take pictures like it was a running gag in a sitcom. Denmark would visit and leave schnapps. Canada would return and leave whiskey. Sometimes they even left hats, military insignia, or little trinkets, like two roommates passive-aggressively decorating the same shelf. It became a full-on tradition, one that lasted decades. And here's the best part. Both sides knew what the other was doing, and neither one ever officially complained. They just kept it going. A 50-year inside joke between two countries that didn't know how to quit. Think about that, just for a minute. For nearly 40 years, soldiers would literally take government-funded expeditions to go, raise a flag, drop off some alcohol, and leave. Imagine being the general explaining that mission. Men, our objective is to reclaim Hans Island. Sir, are we expecting enemy resistance? No, but we might run into a few empty bottles. That's right. No bullets, no bombs, just brandy and polite vandalism. Over the years, this became known internationally as the Whisky War. Reporters from all over the world started covering it. Articles called it the most Canadian conflict ever and the war that runs on good liquor. Denmark's foreign minister once said, "We leave our flag in a bottle and the Canadians leave theirs. It's quite enjoyable." Meanwhile, Canadian officials joked that they weren't sure whether to file it under foreign policy or happy hour, and through all that, not one person got injured, arrested, or offended. The world had found a war everyone could laugh at. When the story started making global headlines, the world couldn't believe it. While other countries were out here flexing nuclear arsenals, Denmark and Canada were swapping liquor on an iceberg. News outlets ate it up. The term Whisky War went viral before viral was even a thing. Even diplomats began sending each other small whiskey bottles as gifts during negotiations, as if to say, no hard feelings. At this point, the whole thing was basically an international meme, proof that not every border dispute had to end in bloodshed. Fast forward to the 2000s, GPS mapping and satellite imaging finally made it possible to get a crystal clear borderline. Denmark and Canada started talking, not out of anger, but because both sides realized this war had gone on long enough. Still, neither side wanted to look like the one that gave up, so they did the most diplomatic thing imaginable. They split the island in half. In June 2022, both nations officially signed a treaty dividing Hans Island down the middle, literally drawing a line through the ice. And naturally, they celebrated the peace treaty with a drink. Officials from both sides raised glasses of schnapps and whiskey, the same two drinks that started it all, and toasted to the most wholesome war in history. No soldiers lost, no civilians displaced, just a half-century-long reminder that sometimes human beings can be ridiculous and respectful at the same time. When you look at it now, the Whisky War feels almost like a parody of every serious conflict in history. While other nations fought over oil, religion, or power, Canada and Denmark fought over pride and alcohol. But that's what makes it powerful. Because if two countries can turn potential hostility into humor, it shows there's another way to handle things. In a weird way, Hans Island became a symbol of restraint. It proved that even at the edge of the world, humans can choose to be playful instead of prideful. Maybe that's why this story still hits today, because the older we get, the more we realize it's not about who owns the land, it's about who owns the moment. And these two nations, they turned an empty rock into a legacy of laughter. So yeah, there once was a war fought with flags, jokes, and liquor bottles, and somehow it made the world a better place.
Next time someone says world peace is impossible, just tell them about the Whisky War, and the only thing spilled was the drink.
I'm Micaiah, and this has been WTF the History Edition, where history gets weird and sometimes beautifully human.